Apologize for starting a little late. I'm having some technical difficulties today. We're without our MVP, Josh Engelman, but holding strong. I got my man, Ship My Money here, Adam Scherer, aka Adam. How are you doing tonight?
Doing good. Pretty fun slate. I think you and I were talking a little bit before the show that
Uh,
it's different. So I think it should be pretty fun to talk about.
yeah, I mean, it's a spot where there's really one game that I'm
Right.
seeing picks from that are actually good, and all the others, not so much to choose from. So. What's what's the game plan here? Are we just gonna have seven guys from the same team and then one off?
I mean, the way ownership projections look, at least right now, I'm perfectly fine with that because it's that game isn't as highly owned as I kind of thought that it would be based on my, based on actual projections. So if that holds, I'm cool with that. If ownership goes up, that's where I think it'll start to get a little bit tougher.
Yeah, so just to get a little bit less vague here, we're of course talking about this Orlando at Cleveland game, projected for 210 points. I mean, it's gonna be hard with Kevin Love out to not love all the Cavaliers. Am I right?
Yeah, of course, especially in this great spot.
But nah, we're just pulling your legs here. So we got this Washington and Miami game. Let's just get it started here, game by game. Washington, 9.5 point dog to Miami, but so last night Isaiah Thomas was kind of the surprise scratch. Then we had so then what happened was Ish Smith got the start, but also Thomas Bryant was out, and because of Thomas Bryant being out, um, we got Wagner who started. And I mean, because of all these guys out, there's just a ton of minutes to go around. So, who are you starting with on this Washington team?
So I think that it's a really scary spot for Washington. Road back to back against a Miami team that is, basically a 10-point favorite. But there's just so few guys, so few healthy bodies on this team. I think it's still, for me, it still starts with Bradley Beal, who is still affordable. He's 8,600 on DraftKings. He's, I think, 9,600 or 9,800 on Fanduel. He's averaging 38 plus minutes in competitive games. Without Isaiah Thomas on the floor this year, he has a 35% usage rate. He shot the ball 24 times last night. He shot the ball 30 times the game before that. He's just doing everything for this team. And so while there is some risk and there's blowout risk, there's just risk that he's really inefficient. When you're playing that many minutes, when you're reasonably priced, and when you're basically the entire offense, it's really difficult to get away from.
Yeah, I mean, the Brad Beal tonight on DraftKings 8,600, FanDuel 9,800. Definitely not expensive enough. I've been projected for almost 50 points or even higher than that. So uh, he's gonna be your core kind of stud to build off of today. I think at kind of a bargain price. But then the best value of the play is also a wizard, in my opinion, Ish Smith. I mean, last night he went out and played 30 plus minutes. He's being backed up by Chris Chiozza, a guy who's now normally not in the rotation. So, do you love Ish as much as I do today?
Yeah, the 34 minutes were nice. Obviously he's capable of disappearing somewhat, but if you're going to play that many minutes and his price tag didn't really have time to move overnight, it's just really, really tough to fail when you consider what else he's getting you in your lineup. And from a minute standpoint for him, you mentioned Chris Chiozza. I think that it's good for Ish that the Wizards went that route as opposed to staggering him with Bradley Beal and having Beal be the backup point guard, which I thought there was a chance they would do that. And if they had done that, then you run the risk of Ish, playing a lot fewer minutes and them just going to more Troy Brown or more of someone else in the front court and kind of just shifting everyone up. But since it seems that they want to keep their rotation with two true point guards as opposed to Bradley Beal, that does help to solidify Ish's minutes.
Nice. So, I think that Ish is a pretty reliable guy tonight. Not a full fantasy point per minute guy, but he's 3,600 on DraftKings, 4,300 on FanDuel. Certainly going to be really popular. But then we got kind of these other guys. Mo Wagner, he went out last night against Joel Embiid and actually didn't foul out. I was pretty impressed. But against Miami and Bam, not quite as scary a matchup as far as fouls. So do you think maybe Wagner is a decent play tonight?
Yeah, I think I'll be going right back to him. He burned me last night, but Jan Mahinmi being out of this game is obviously not really relevant from a fantasy standpoint for Mahinmi, but it's there's no backup center on the Wizards now. You're back to having Mo Wagner and then Rui or Bertans or Admiral Schofield, all of who are not centers. So I think that Wagner should play more minutes, assuming he's not in foul trouble, than the 26 he did last night. I have him at about 30 minutes now because of him being out. He's averaged 1.2 DraftKings points per minute this year. When he plays alongside Beal, he's still at 1.12 DraftKings points per minute. I don't have him projected at that high of a rate in this particular matchup, but still at a high enough clip where he's a strong option. His salary actually came down on DraftKings as well.
Nice, man. Yeah, I mean, think that it's hard to not love any of these guys. Wagner is a pretty good point per minute producer, and then Rui Hachimura. He played a huge minutes last night, and I'm expecting to get more rebounds than normal because of moving down to the center position. So, are all four of these guys kind of core plays for you?
Yeah, Rui played 42 minutes last night. He played 38, I think it was the game before that when Bryant was first out. So I think that, again, you should get huge minutes from him. He's been about a 0.89 fantasy point per minute guy this year. I agree with you that the rebounding numbers should go up. Probably counteracted a bit by just the fact that this isn't a super appealing matchup. But if you're going to get 0.85 to 0.9 fantasy points per minute and you have a mid 5K guy that you can reasonably project for 38 minutes, it's just really tough not to get there.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's gonna be hard not to stack this team up, to be honest. So, one guy that I'm not completely sold on is Davis Bertans. He just doesn't offer a lot as far as assists, and he's not a great rebounder, but he could play big minutes. Is he also a core play, or are you kind of with me that maybe he's not as good as the other guys?
No, I'm with you. I haven't really had a lot of him the last 2 days. It hasn't been fun either time, but it's just that he's a great 3-point shooter and he's a good overall basketball player. He's really important to the Wizards, but from a fantasy standpoint, like you said, he doesn't contribute a ton in the way of peripherals. His rebounding numbers could go up a bit as well, just from potentially picking up a couple of center minutes, but he's out there basically to knock down threes and to score. So he's really scoring dependent. His salary is coming up. It's not a good matchup, especially for someone who you're relying on just to score. So I do have him behind Beal and Rui and Wagner and Ish as far as guys from the Wizards that I'm getting to.
Nice. So maybe that's a guy to steer clear from a little bit, especially because last night he kind of put up a lot more points than you'd expect. I think he had 20 first half like actual points, so that was kind of crazy. Finally, we got some other guys lurking around here, like Isak Bonga starting, and then Troy Brown is subbing in for him. Neither of these guys really made an impact last night, but do you think there's a chance that these will be fantasy plays tonight?
I don't have much interest there. Troy Brown's someone that I've been rostering the last couple of days just because it seemed like with McRae out, he should get more minutes, but he just doesn't. Scott Brooks does not like playing him all that much. He was pretty productive last night, so I got kind of lucky there, but he still only played 18 minutes, and it just makes it really hard to trust him. I have him at 22 minutes tonight because of Mahinmi being out. I think it just opens up a couple of more wing minutes, but it's still just really tough to confidently project him for a bunch of additional minutes.
Yeah, it seems like every time I projected him for 24 or more, he just never ends up getting there, which
Right.
is sad. But this Miami team, equally exciting on the other side, I'd say. Justice Winslow is going to be a huge difference tonight because he's questionable. If he's in, he'll probably play big minutes. He's actually been coming off the bench recently, so that's been kind of interesting. Uh, do you expect him to continue coming off the bench indefinitely, or what do you make of that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, it definitely helps them have another ball handler off the bench, especially while Goran Dragic is out. So I think that's good for him. I would think that at some point this season he takes over the starting spot from Duncan Robinson. But if he were to play tonight, I would expect him to come off the bench still.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So if he's in 5,500 on DraftKings and 5,600 on FanDuel, that kind of puts him as like a good play, but not a great one. I would take it. But if he's out, I think that opens up a lot for the team. So why don't you break down both of the situations? So if he's in, what would he do with this team? And if he's out, then how would you approach it?
Yeah, so if he's in, I think that For the most part, the guys that I like for Miami are good plays, even if Winslow's in, and then they're just great plays if he's out. If Winslow himself is in, I agree with you that he's a good play, but he's probably not a core guy for me. The biggest negative impacts, I think, if Winslow is in, is that Tyler Hero would have a harder time getting to like 30 minutes, which is where I have him projected if Winslow's out. You also could potentially, if Winslow's out, see more minutes for Meyers Leonard. And I think that you would get Derek Jones Jr. playing somewhere around 18 minutes in a matchup that suits his skill set extremely well. So that would give you, if Winslow's out, it would give you two minimum price guys that you could kind of throw darts at in a great matchup in Leonard and Jones. If Winslow's in, those guys are completely off the board. Hero becomes a much tougher guy to get to if Winslow's in. Kendrick Nunn, I think, is a good play regardless. If Winslow's in, I think the minutes are a little bit more volatile for Nunn, whether he plays 26 or plays like 34. But if Winslow's out, it's really difficult not to give Nunn 32 to 34 minutes because Dragic is also out. So the backcourt, would be really thin. They'd be really short on ball handlers. So I think that it would at least help to solidify Nunn if Winslow's out. It helps to solidify Butler just because you're getting more assist opportunities for him. But he's a great play with or without Winslow as well.
Yeah, Nunn, man, he just played monster minutes a couple of games ago when Dragic was out. So two games ago, he played 38 minutes. Last game, only 26. So a pretty volatile player with everyone in. But if Winslow's out, you gotta expect that he'll be in the 30s. He'd be a great play in that case. So I gotta interrupt the game by game here. We got Kevin Love ruled out. Tristan Thompson is also a game time decision tonight. So that was a little wrinkle that maybe we didn't expect. So I guess that means Tristan is questionable. So I'm seeing a couple guys that are really affected by this news. Of course, Larry Nance, much cheaper on DraftKings than on Fanduel. And then one guy that I wasn't expecting I might have tonight is John Henson, but he's back for Cleveland and he's not a bad fantasy player. So what do you make of this?
Yeah, I think that if Love is out, Nance is a decent option. But one thing to keep in mind would be that if Love is out and Thompson's in, I don't expect Nance to get those backup center minutes that are incredibly valuable for him now that Henson is back. So that would be one difference between this game and the last time that Love was out. But if Thompson is also out, then it's a huge bump for Nance because he would most likely get center minutes. You could see I guess Ante Zizic re-enter the rotation, but I think Nance would get some center minutes, and then Henson would play, probably as much as he can. He played his first game since I think the end of October last time out. Played about 13 minutes, so it would be hard for me to project him for more than like 18 to 20 anyway. But he's the absolute minimum salary, and he has always been a pretty decent fantasy producer.
Yeah, he's about a point a minute guy, so that would be a big question mark because he's only played two games this whole season, and yeah, you can't expect him to really be in great game shape here, only playing 14 minutes in the last game. So then maybe a lot of Zizic, but there's also some other guys. We can get to it more when we get to this game, but the main takeaway is that if Tristan's in, he should be a good play, and Nance should be a good play. But Tristan is out, then Nance is probably a core play. Would you agree with that?
Yep.
Okay. So going back to Miami, because I feel like this is a really important situation. You were mentioning to me earlier that you're kind of eyeing Meyers Leonard. So I, I have to say he wasn't on my radar, but I'm always interested in hearing some arguments here.
Yeah, it's not that I think it's like a high probability play. It's just that basically what you've been seeing as far as the rotation goes with Leonard is that he's starting the game, he's closing the second quarter, and then he's opening the third quarter and never coming back. And you have Kelly Olynyk playing all the minutes behind them. I don't think that rotation changes a whole lot, but if Winslow is out, it does just make the entire team pretty shorthanded. So I think that you would get Derek Jones Jr. getting more minutes, and I think that potentially you could see Leonard go from like 18 minutes to maybe 20 to 22. And it is a great spot for him. He is someone that can, obviously get hot from three and knock down some shots. So it's just, if he's going to be completely unowned at the minimum salary and he's playing in what I think is the most appealing game on the slate for the team and the best spot on the slate, I like the idea of getting there and just kind of hoping that variance works out in my favor and I get a couple additional minutes from him.
Oh, okay, because I'm sure not many people will be there, and he's incredibly cheap. I mean, pretty much the minimum. We got some more news here. Oklahoma City, Deontay Burton is suspended. So I mean, not the most exciting news. Does that move the needle at all?
I did have him getting like 20 minutes, so I need to figure out where those go, I guess.
Terrence Ferguson night, am I right?
He's out.
Oh, Terrence Ferguson is out. Oh
Yeah.
crap. So,
Yeah, I
uh,
had Burton partially filling in for Ferguson.
so do you think that Schroeder gets a start tonight?
I think they either spot start Nader or Schroeder starts, but I think that Schroeder closes.
Okay, so that's a big bump for Schroeder. Kind of going really out of order here, so I appreciate everyone for bearing with us. So this is actually significant news that Burton is out. I'm actually looking at their roster here. I'm having trouble figuring out who to give these minutes to. So, uh, Ferguson was playing 30 minutes. Schroeder was playing 29. So if we put Schroeder at 34, that's still about 25 minutes we got to distribute between some other guys. Not to mention the 9 from Burton.
Right. Yeah, because Abdel Nader had been backing up Ferguson. I already had him at 24 minutes. I guess I can go to 30, but yeah, like I guess 30 there, and then you probably get more minutes from Darius Baisley.
So Abdel Nader has actually been good for fantasy this year. He's averaging about 0.75 fantasy points per minute. Another dirt cheap option you can go to. Um, we'll get back to that and the game flow here. But one last guy that I think is worth mentioning is Duncan Robinson is pretty cheap on FanDuel. If Winslow misses, you expect big minutes for him.
Yeah, I have Robinson in at 30 minutes right now. I think that potentially you could get even more, like minutes I have going to Derek Jones Jr. or, maybe the couple extra minutes that I have going or like the couple of minutes I have going to Chris Silva could potentially go to Duncan Robinson instead.
Awesome. So, pretty appealing game with Miami and Washington. That'll probably be what decides the night. So gotta do some reads here. So, first of all, the most important tool in fantasy is, of course, your own intuition. But a close second is the Awesemo.com membership. You can really use all the tools to up your game. So we got all the analysis that we hope to give out, the shows and articles, but a lot of tools like my projections, the ownership. We have the boom bust tool, the deep dive written by you and Laffy. So all these are kind of little weapons you can use in your arsenal to strengthen your game. So if you want to give it a try and you missed our Cyber Monday deal that crashed the site, the code is deeper dive for 50% off your first week or month. All right, next game, Brooklyn and Charlotte. Total of 220, so not too bad. We've been seeing with Kyrie out that some of these guys have been taking a step forward in fantasy, namely Spencer Dinwiddie, Torian Prince, and Garrett Temple, but their prices have all gone up. So, do you think there's a lot of value in this game tonight?
Not really. I do think it's an appealing game as far as the matchups go. Neither team particularly good defensively. Brooklyn plays fast, but I think the pricing has gotten pretty efficient. At least on DraftKings here, Spencer Dinwiddie at 8,200 is fine, but not a huge priority for me. It's a really good spot for Jared Allen as far as rebounding goes and being able to score in the paint against a Charlotte team that's allowed the second most points in the paint this year. But the minutes are obviously a concern. Even last game where he went for 50 plus fantasy points against the Hawks, he only played about 28 and a half, 29 minutes. And DeAndre Jordan, as far as we know, is active tonight. So it's really tough to be projecting Allen for more than 28 minutes, and that makes it tough to get to that salary. Torian Prince's salary jumped as well. He's got a 22.8% usage rate since Kyrie went down, which is nice, but the salary is getting expensive. And then Garrett Temple actually leads the team in minutes played since Irving's injury. But again, you're just looking at a pretty expensive price tag for Garrett Temple.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. Jordan has been averaging 21.4 minutes this season. Jared Allen 26.6. So pretty much that's what I'm expecting tonight. The matchup versus Charlotte doesn't really lean one way or the other to me because Bismack Biyombo isn't the toughest matchup. Charlotte, the only difference recently is Biyombo's been starting, but Devontae Graham has kind of been their surprise player of the year. He's been good, but the price is up a lot to the point where I'm not super interested. How about you, man? Any love for these Hornets?
Not really. The pricing, as you mentioned, is just pretty expensive. I don't really like the idea of, as good as Devontae Graham's been, I don't love the idea of paying an extra $1,000 just because he made 10 3-pointers last game. That seems like a pretty inefficient way to go about things. So pretty tough to get there. Rozier's salary has come up as well. And then with everyone else, good luck figuring out how many minutes these guys play.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's actually an advantage for GPPs where PJ Washington, it seems like he'll play anywhere between like 22 and 36 minutes a night. So that's the kind of variance you actually want
Yep.
because he's priced for playing about 28 minutes. So maybe a little bit of a guy to sprinkle in. Next game, we got Indiana and Detroit. Uh, Pretty much fully healthy. So for Detroit, Luke Kennard was out last game, but he's back today. Pretty expensive players. Maybe Andre is playable. Blake, these, I think FanDuel and DraftKings did a really nice job of pricing most of the games today. So I'm not really seeing a huge advantage here. But what do you think of this game here?
Yeah, I think the pricing's pretty efficient here. One thing to keep an eye on is if Tristan Thompson sits, I think the spot gets a lot better for Andre Drummond. You would go from Tristan Thompson, who obviously is a good rebounder and a veteran guy that certainly has a presence in the paint, to having John Henson, who I believe is like 7 feet tall and might weigh as much as I do. Just someone that Drummond can just absolutely destroy. Yeah, 6'11", 218 pounds for John Henson. So he's giving up, I think, 40 or 50 pounds to Drummond.
Yeah, I think we're getting mixed up here because I have Detroit and Indiana
Yep.
playing.
Did they play Cleveland recently? Because I was definitely going from
It's all good,
memory.
man. So Detroit, there, it'd be Miles Turner and
Yeah.
Drummond.
So it's
Uh,
still an undersized front court, but not as
yeah,
undersized.
I think that's a
Yeah,
spot that Fast Eddie Fear loves to comment on, if I recall correctly.
yeah, yeah, it is. So yeah. Anyway, pretty good price on Drummond as far as being efficient. I think that he's a decent option, but not a priority for me.
Yeah, same. One guy I'm eyeing is Bruce Brown at 3,800 on FanDuel, but I mean, you can't get too excited there. Indiana, Malcolm Brogdon has really upped his game this season, but the price is kind of caught up. Not a great matchup. Pretty slow-paced teams here, and I'm not seeing a whole lot to be interested in. Do you have any of these Indiana players?
Not really. Detroit's not very good defensively, which is nice, but and you do have decent pricing on Sabonis and Brogdon, but you have the fully healthy starting unit for they've played about 5 games together now. It's not quite as appealing as it was earlier in the year for these guys. So if I got to anyone from Indiana, I think it would be Brogdon or Sabonis, but there's just guys on in other spots that I like a bit more.
All right, cool. Sounds good. This show we're brought to you by Yahoo Daily Fantasy. Yahoo has been stepping up their game for this NBA season. They have a 50K prize pool tonight, and my general feeling is that all the sharps are kind of gravitating towards the sites where they have the highest volume, but Yahoo, a lot of people may not take the time to play there, and you're only as good as the difference in your skill versus your opponents. So I really feel strongly that Yahoo is the best place to get started. If you are not already a member of Yahoo, make sure to navigate to our cash building blocks article. I'll drop a link in the chat here, and you can click the link in the article, get $30 free in their rewards points. Next game, let's go to the one we were talking about, Cleveland and Orlando. Orlando is a 3.75 point favorite. But the real action, I guess, is on Cleveland's side now with Love out. So we kind of went through it a little bit, but do you have any love for guys like Ante Zizic or John Henson, or is it kind of just sticking to Nance and Tristan Thompson?
If Thompson's out, I have some interest in Henson and a lot more interest in Nance because I think Nance would get backup center minutes, at least to some extent, and just be more productive without Thompson out there. If Thompson's in, I'm not that interested in either one. Thompson's salary is pretty fair, and it's not like it's a great matchup against Orlando. Nance is, I think, the preferable option for me. He's pretty inexpensive, especially at 5,100. And he's power forward eligible, but his rates just aren't as good when you project him to play alongside Thompson as they are when he's playing center.
Yeah. We got a super chat here, so I got to interrupt. $138 from Coach
Sweet.
S111. I mean, this guy, he's a high stakes grinder. I see him in all these games. He said he's up $138,000 this season using the tools.
Sweet.
Um, and he has a question for us.
I think I got the Docker container working.
What is going on here? All right, so I'm not sure what that was, but all right, so top five exposed players tonight that you have. What total percentage owned would you have those guys? So I'm taking it that Miami and Washington, pretty much all of my favorite players are from this game. I could see myself averaging like maybe like 3 or 4 players above 50% in that game. How about you?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm looking at right now. Like in the crunch that I did before the show, it was pretty close to 100% ish, like 80% Beal, and then around 50% on guys like Butler and Nunn and Wagner and stuff. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, thanks, Coach S. You kick ass. We got another little super chat here. This guy, K Murray DFS, showing you some love. The only person better than Julia Rose is shit my money. So man, you're getting some major respect here. All right.
Thanks, Kyle.
Any love for maybe some other Cleveland players like Con Sexton or Chetty?
Not really. This offense, you get a little bit more usage and rebounding without Love, but the offense also becomes less efficient without him out there. The pricing is pretty fair on these guys. I think that, yeah, there's nothing that really stands out. Jordan Clarkson, I think, is the guy that I would get to the most behind Nance, just because Love being out opens the door for a couple more minutes for him. It also opens the door for them to need another scorer. Without Love on the floor this year, he has a 27% usage rate. He's only 3,900 on DraftKings and has guard forward eligibility, which is really nice. So he's a guy that I don't mind getting to in some tournament lineups.
Nice. Yeah, so some maybe you guys sprinkle in here on Cleveland. We got some more news, man. Dion Waiters out. That actually is surprisingly significant because I thought he might play with if Justice Winslow didn't play. So
I didn't think he would play, but I'm glad he's out just so that's one less guy that can just get thrown onto the floor and mess everything up.
yeah, so that's just gonna mean more minutes for like Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Butler if Winslow's out. So it's one less guy as you mentioned. Orlando, Jonathan Isaac has stepped up his game this season, and especially with Vooch out, been getting some more shots. He's probably my top option for Orlando, but Aaron Gordon, he's been pretty hot. His price has gone up to compensate for that, though. Any love for the Magic?
I think Isaac and Fultz are the two I'm most interested in. Isaac really hasn't come through lately, but for the season, he's been a really productive player, well over a fantasy point per minute. It's a nice matchup against Cleveland. If Thompson's out, their interior defense gets even worse too, which would be nice. The minutes have been pretty volatile, but we just saw, in the Washington game, I think 2 games ago for Orlando, he played 37 minutes. He didn't do much, but he at least has that sort of minutes upside. So I think he's a pretty interesting option. And then Markel Fultz is playing around 30 minutes a game now. He has a 25.4% usage rate without Vooch on the floor. Cleveland's not any good defensively. He's still pretty reasonably priced. So I think Fultz is a pretty good low-owned contrarian target.
I like it, man. Fultz has actually learned how to shoot this year. 55% true shot. That was his main weakness. So maybe we're seeing a little comeback story here. Next game, Denver and Boston. We're gonna just kind of go speed through a few of these games, I think, because we're running short on time. But Denver and Boston, lowest total of the slate, 205. Two pretty good teams, but not great fantasy matchups for either one. But I mean, maybe it's contrarian to go here. What do you think?
Yeah, pretty ugly game. I think that there's a couple of like individual plays that are favorably priced, like Nikola Jokic at 8K on DraftKings. I think he's like 8,500 on FanDuel too. Certainly someone you can get to. Right now, I'm basically right around the field as on Jokic. Murray, of course, is a high upside play. He's just scoring dependent. And then, on the other side, you have decent price tags on like Jason Tatum. But overall, just I think a game that I will have very little exposure to.
Yeah, tough one here. I think that maybe in this scenario, you kind of go to the higher price guys because they have the upside. can kind of break the slate a little bit, but it's tough to love them. Boston, we have Marcus Smart, questionable, I believe. So if you had Semi Ojeleye, take him out. But do you think Smart coming back moves the needle for anyone?
I think it just I don't think it does a whole lot of anything. It just takes minutes away from a bunch of secondary options. I think that probably the biggest negative impact it has, if you're looking at the rotation last game, is Daniel Theis had a huge game. He played, I think, 26 or 27 minutes. I think that with Smart back, it's a little bit tougher for him to get that much run. I have him at 24 minutes right now. So I think that, maybe a little bit of a hit in his minutes.
Okay, good to know. So next game we got sorry, I'm a little disorganized today. Golden State and Chicago. D'Angelo Russell back. I was really disappointed last game because he went minute for minute with Draymond Green, and we know Draymond Green is on a minutes limit here of about 24, or at least that's what the coach said. I think they said he won't play more than like mid-20s of minutes or something like that. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it was like 27. It was like a really random number.
Yeah. So, is it a bad assumption to assume Russell, if he was on the court exactly the same time as Green, is also kind of having a similar limitation?
I don't know. That's an interesting point because obviously it was Russell's first game back after being out for a while. So it's kind of hard without a quote to tell if that was just his first game back or if that's an intended thing where they are not giving him a bunch of minutes. I have him at 30 minutes right now. That's still not really enough for me to be getting him all that much on this slate. So I'd be surprised, I guess, if he played a lot more than 30. I wouldn't be surprised if he got stuck at like 26.
Yeah, either way, big hit to a lot of these guys in usage and minutes.
Yep.
So the Golden State gravy train is over. I'm on 0 of these guys tonight. Is there any one you're interested in at all?
Nope, same boat as you. They were really, really appealing when they had 8 players, and now they're apparently going to run an 11-man rotation. So that is the exact opposite of having 8 players.
All right, we got the Magic starting lineup. It's about what we expected. Fultz, Fournier, Gordon, Isaac, Birch. I guess that's not really news. Chicago, we have Thaddeus Young out. And I'm kind of thinking maybe that makes Markkanen a little bit interesting because Thaddeus Young is a much better player than whoever is going to replace him. So, do you think it's a little optimistic to? Is it over optimistic to expect Markkanen to get some more minutes here, or is that a good assumption?
I have him at 33 minutes. I had him at 29 with Young in. I think it's a good assumption because there's not a natural backup here either. Like I think you're going to get either Luke Cornett playing the 4, or you're going to get like undersized, or they'll go small with like a Denzel Washington or Denzel Valentine or something. God, a rough show today. But I think that your point is really true because it's been really hard for Markkanen to get a bunch of minutes, like to get a lot more than 30 minutes when Young's his backup, because that means Young playing less than 18, and Young's kind of just too good for that to happen. So him being out, I think it's pretty easy to give Markkanen a few more minutes. The bigger concern, obviously, is what Markkanen does with those minutes. He hasn't been all that great this year, but the salary is low. We know that he is at least capable of putting up big fantasy games. I think that Wendell Carter is hurting his rebounding numbers. He's not getting minutes at center. So there's still things working against him, but much more appealing to me with Young out than he would have been if Young was in.
Yeah, I kind of like him. I think there's a edge to have him tonight. Wendell Carter is someone, man, I've been fading every day because he fouls at an absurd rate. He's so lucky that he's on the court for 30 minutes a game. Unless I'm just like missing something, it just seems unsustainable.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of torn on it because he has been playing so many minutes lately and doing a pretty good job of staying out of foul trouble. The price coming up, I think, makes it a pretty neutral play, but I do really like his rebounding numbers. I like the spot here against Golden State. Just a really inefficient shooting team that should give him tons of rebounding opportunities. So not really taking a strong stand one way or the other. Pretty neutral on Carter.
Yeah, not someone that has a great price tonight, so not a huge factor. We got a super chat from Thomas Richt. He says the show's been upping his DFS game, so thanks, Thomas. All right. Minnesota, Oklahoma City. This one has a little bit more intrigue because Andrew Wiggins is questionable tonight. Karl-Anthony Towns was also limited at shoot around, but he's listed as probable. So if Wiggins is out, does that make you interested in any guys in particular on Minnesota?
Yeah, if Wiggins is out, I think you get more of everything, more usage and more assists from Towns. I think it'll be a bump for Teague in terms of minutes and opportunities. Jarrett Culver would probably play more minutes. Josh Okogie would probably play more minutes because Jake Layman is also out. So they'd be pretty short. They'd be pretty short-handed if Wiggins sits. I'm treating it as if he's going to play if we don't get news, since he did at least partially go through shoot around, and normally he's not one to really miss games. But yeah, if he's out, I think that it makes Minnesota go from a decent but not overly attractive team to a team that has a lot of really good options on it, and potentially would be a team that you like if we were to get news that Wiggins is out at like 7:30, you would probably be able to late swap on late swap sites some of your Washington, Miami to Minnesota and get them at much lower ownership.
Who would be the play? Would it be Teague, who's been kind of benched?
Yeah, I think it would be Teague. He's been playing about 28 minutes off the bench. I think you would get more minutes for him, and I think that you would get I think there's a good chance if Wiggins is out that Teague would start and they would just slide Culver down. So I think Teague would get more minutes. He'd get more usage. Culver would get more minutes, and then Towns would be even more involved offensively.
Nice. Yeah, I kind of like maybe Towns there because Wiggins has 29% usage. That's more than 10% more than anyone who'd replace him. So you got to
Yeah.
think that Towns would benefit a lot. Oklahoma City, we've been kind of going through them a little bit, so I'm going to try to look up their roster real quick to figure out who these minutes are going to, because I honestly don't have a great instinct for this. But let's start with Chris Paul. I mean, not a great fantasy asset this year, but does Terrence Ferguson being out make any difference as far as minutes for him?
I think it solidifies the minutes. I didn't really give him anything extra. I have him at 32. It certainly doesn't affect the usage because you're talking about like an 8% usage guy in Terrence Ferguson. So I don't think Paul is all that affected. The main reason that I have some interest in Paul is just the pace up spot against Minnesota, who's fourth in pace this year. They're decent defensively. Paul hasn't been great from a fantasy standpoint, but I still think he's reasonably priced. I think the matchup is decent enough.
All right. Yeah, so pretty decent price. So I'm kind of interested. 6,900 Fanduel, very nice. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. He's been averaging only 33 minutes a game over the last 5, but with more wing minutes to go around, do you think maybe they push him a little bit harder tonight?
Yeah, I have him at 36, which is what he was averaging for the first month or so of the season. I think that I'm pretty comfortable giving him a couple of extra minutes because of Ferguson being out. I think he's a good option here as well. I like him a little bit more than Paul, where they're the same price on FanDuel. He's, I think, $300 less expensive, and a shooting guard, which is nice as well. But yeah, leads or second to Dennis Schroeder in usage, and just plays a bunch of minutes. He's scoring dependent, so it's kind of risky because he can give you, pretty empty stat lines. You need him to kind of run good in peripherals or score a lot of points. But I think the salary and the matchup are both pretty good for him.
I kind of like it. Should see more minutes tonight. It's the edge. I feel like the most affected guys are Schroeder and Nader. These guys are fairly cheap and not too unproductive on the court. Do you think you'd have a lot of Nader at the minimum?
I don't think I'll have a lot of Nader. I think that it's certainly reasonable. One thing that stuck out to me is that overall for the season, he has a 21.5% usage rate. But if you put Shea Gilgeous-Alexander on the floor, just for example, as like a high usage guy, Nader's usage has dropped to 13.5%. He's never really been like a great producer throughout his career either. So he's someone that I would be really hesitant about treating like his role is the same. Like he's replacing an 8% guy in Ferguson. He's going to play more minutes alongside Paul and Gilgeous-Alexander. So I don't expect him to have as big a role offensively. But, when you're talking about a $3,100 guy that potentially is playing 30 minutes in a fast-paced game, it doesn't take a whole lot for things to still break your way.
I think you talked me off the ledge there. I mean, if he's sliding in for Terrence Ferguson, you got to think that he won't get as many shots. So I think that's a great point. Schroeder, I feel like he might be a core play for me now because he usually plays 29 minutes if he's up to the mid 30s. I mean, that's a huge difference. I mean, that would be like 6 fantasy points above his salary. So, how do you feel about Schroeder?
Yeah, I like him a lot here. He was kind of on the fringe for me anyway because his pricing is pretty affordable, and because even with Ferguson out, I was willing to give him, like 30 minutes instead of 28. Now with Burton out also, I think that going to 32 or 34 minutes is very reasonable for him. We've seen plenty of minutes where him, Paul, and Gilgeous-Alexander all play. This isn't a Minnesota team where it's difficult for them to do that. You don't have, it's not like they have a big lineup or they have like a three that you have to have a bigger defender out there for. So there's no real reason that they can't run these three together. So I think that Schroeder becomes a really, really good option.
I like it. Next game, we got the Clippers at the Bucks. Fantastic matchup. The Clippers are actually a 4-point underdog here to Milwaukee, which is kind of interesting. But I feel like maybe we see some more minutes for guys like Yanis, Kawhi, and Paul George, who are all guys who, they're trying to manage the workload throughout the season. So do you see any advantage in taking some of these guys?
Yeah, I thought this was a really interesting game when I wrote the deep dive today, because if you go back and look over, 10 games or 15 games or whatever, and you look at average minutes played, it's really low. Like for the season, I think Giannis has averaged 31 and a half minutes since George and Leonard both returned to the lineup. They've averaged, like 29 or 30 minutes, but these are both teams that are just so much better than most teams that they play. It's not that they're intentionally limiting these guys' minutes. It's that they don't play very many competitive games. But in competitive games all year, Giannis has been playing 35, 36 minutes. We've seen 34 from Leonard. We've seen George on pace to play 34 plus. So with two really, really good teams going at it here, I think that on one hand, it's not an overly appealing matchup because both teams are so good defensively. But on the other hand, Milwaukee's the second fastest team in the league, and you can pretty confidently project more minutes for all of these star players than they normally get. So it makes them a little bit underpriced.
Yeah, I think there's some intrigue here, especially with the value on Washington, Miami. You're gonna have to get some studs. Kawhi Leonard's price is down a lot. He's only 8,400 on DraftKings, 9,400 on Fanduel. Giannis, not as much, 11.3 DraftKings, 12.3 on Fanduel. Uh, any other guys? Maybe like Chris Middleton or Bledsoe.
Yeah, I think that. So you mentioned Kawhi, you mentioned Giannis. I think that Montrezl Harrell is an interesting tournament option. Right now, we have him projected for very low ownership. It's not that he's a core play, but as far as being over the field, I think I'll be there. Just because this isn't a matchup where I expect Zubats to be playing a ton of minutes, and so I think that you're going to get 30 to 32 from Harrell. Fast-paced game, and he's actually been the second most productive Clipper on a per minute basis since George and Kawhi came back. He still averaged 1.22 DraftKings points per minute. He's, I think, going to go completely overlooked. So he's someone I like in tournaments too.
All right, one piece of injury news we got in this game is that JaMychal Green is questionable. I'm expecting Patrick Patterson to just slide into that minutes, but is there any reason to go to anyone based on that news?
I don't think so. I mean, if you're going to take if you're going to sprinkle in some JaMychal Green at 3,500, that's one thing, but definitely shouldn't be a core play for you. And if he's out, I don't expect Patrick Patterson to be the highest value on the slate like he was last time.
Yeah, not too exciting there. So we got two more games here. Sacramento at San Antonio. Sacramento, I think, is one of the more interesting spots of the evening because so we got Bogdanovich questionable, Corey Joseph also questionable. And if they're both out, that's a lot of minutes to go around. So I think there's two approaches this game: late swap and non-late swap. So, if assuming we don't have any news about Kojo before lock, what would you do with maybe Yogi Ferrell?
Yeah, I think that it is a really interesting spot because Ferrell, if Kojo's out, Ferrell gets more minutes, regardless of what Bogdan's doing. If Bogdan's out, Ferrell probably doesn't get that many minutes. He basically was just the backup to Joseph last game. So you basically need Joseph to be out for it to be a benefit for Ferrell, which makes me hesitant to get to too much of him on a non-late swap site like Fanduel. Obviously you could get to some because he's going to be completely unowned, and if you're a little bit over the field and Kojo sits, that's a really good spot to be in. But I'd be hesitant to have too much relying on that. On DraftKings, obviously you can DraftKings, Yahoo, you can late swap if we get the Kojo news after lock.
I agree with that, but the tricky thing is that all the guys you want are at 7 p.m. So it's gonna be hard to swap off Yogi Ferrell and get anyone you want.
Yeah.
So
Ish is at 8 at least.
Oh, is it at 8 o'clock? My bad.
Yeah.
That is pretty relevant then, because man, I feel like if you have Yogi and Ish in your lineup, man, you got so much money.
Yeah.
All right. So Bogdan, if he's out, do we see more minutes from Trevor Ariza? He like had 30 minutes in the last game or something crazy.
Yeah, I think Ariza would play more. Obviously, what he does with those minutes is anyone's guess, but it's kind of similar to the Abdel Nader situation where he doesn't project very good on a per minute basis. But anytime you have a minimum salary guy playing 30 plus minutes, there's certainly a pretty clear path to how he ends up being a good play. So, he's someone where I think I don't mind having, some exposure sprinkled to him, but clearly not making Trevor Ariza a core part of my night.
What about Buddy Hield? He's been pretty high usage. Getting more than 36 minutes a night with Bogdan kind of being uh, a little iffy when he's been playing. Do you have any interest in Hield?
Yeah, I think that if Bogdan sits, Hield is the best play for me from the Kings. If Bogdan sits and Joseph plays, that is. He has a 29.5% usage rate without Bogdan or Fox on the floor. He's playing monster minutes. I have him projected for 38. I think he played 40 or 41 against Portland in their last game. So the thing with Hield is that his per minute production on an average basis doesn't really go up with these guys out because he's not great at creating his own shot. He benefits from someone like De'Aaron Fox getting him open looks. So the efficiency isn't there, but the upside increases because of shot volume. And obviously there's going to be some games where he just shoots better than average, and he has the opportunity to do that when Bogdanovich and Fox are out.
Yeah, there's still have extra shots to go around. I forgot to bully people for likes, but we got some incentive today. If there are 500 likes on this combined stream, we're gonna make the rankings free. If we have 1,000 likes, the ownership projections will be free. So make sure to click that like button. So thank you guys. San Antonio, Marcus Aldridge is back. That pretty much makes me unenthusiastic about anyone because Rudy Gay had been pretty exciting starting. His price has gone up. I assume he moves back to the bench maybe, or do you think it would be Pirtle?
I'm expecting Pirtle to go back to the bench because Gay had actually started next to Aldridge. I think it was 3 games ago. Obviously, it's Pop, and who really knows? But my guess is that Pirtle comes off the bench.
I kind of like that prediction because Rashawn Holmes is a pretty small center, so I feel like that's a good matchup for Aldridge. So does that make you interested in Gay, or is the price just too high at this point?
It's come up enough to where I'm not really that interested. When he plays alongside, or when he has played alongside DeRozan and Aldridge this year, he only has a 17% usage rate too. So he takes a hit there. Obviously gets more minutes, but not as productive. And then the salaries come up. It's a really slow Sacramento team. There's no real lack of value or low mid range guys on this slate either.
Yeah, I agree. Lonnie Walker has been a trending name recently. Pretty much no interest there with LMA back, right?
Yeah, I gave Walker 18 minutes. I basically am projecting him to replace Marco Bellinelli in the rotation, and I think that he will more than 0 times be a pain in the ass because Pop decides to just do something crazy, but nothing that I can actually get to.
All right, you guys heard it here first. Fade Lonnie Walker. All right, Lakers at Portland is our last game here. Lakers a 4.5 point favorite. Anthony Davis and LeBron, they are pretty cheap tonight. Right around 10K on DraftKings and 10.8 and 7K on Fanduel. Does that make you have some interest in those guys?
Yeah, I'm really interested in them because it's a nice pace-up spot for the Lakers. Portland's played at a top 10 pace this year. They are not good defensively, and adding Carmelo Anthony to the lineup, while it has helped their offense, it certainly has not helped their defense. And it's just a team where where their production's coming from. It's a team with 115 team total, and there's 2 high usage guys on the team and then just a bunch of fillers. So it's really appealing getting to those guys. I really like the salaries on them. As much as I like Yanis at 11.3, for example, and think that he's underpriced, I think LeBron at 10.1 is pretty comparably underpriced. He's averaged 1.6 DraftKings points per minute this season, and it's a good spot for him. So I like him. I like Davis. I don't know that I would want to roster them together because that hasn't worked out all that often this year, but they're cheap enough where I'm not completely opposed to it either.
I like it, man. I think that Portland should challenge them enough that maybe they could both have a good game. Rondo has been someone that's been kind of on the fringe of playable. Would you have interest in him tonight?
Not a ton. His salaries come up a bit, and I'm still not really convinced that he plays huge minutes. He played, I think, 28 last game, but benefited some from the blowout against the Jazz. I have him at 24 minutes here, which gets like I have him projected for about a point per minute in 24 minutes. So not someone that I expect to get to a whole lot of or any.
Yeah, I'm a little bit skeptical of Rondo, but maybe if you're looking for a guy in the late slate, you consider him. For Portland, Carmelo has been playing average of 32 minutes over the last 5 games. Hasn't seemed to move the needle much for Lillard and McCollum. Their usage is still high. But between those 3 guys, are there any that you would play tonight?
On DraftKings, I think Lillard stands out. His FanDuel price tag is more expensive, but he's 8,500 on DraftKings, which is just a really low price point for someone who it's a bad matchup. I mean, the Lakers are great defensively. They are a really slow team, but Lillard in competitive games plays 37 minutes consistently. His minutes have been down recently just as a result of a lot of blowouts lately. But, we saw it against the Kings that in a competitive game, he goes right back out, plays 37, 38 minutes. And you mentioned that the usage hasn't come down for him and McCollum since Anthony came. One reason for that is that Terry Stotts has been staggering the minutes. So Lillard is playing about 30% of his minutes with McCollum and Anthony on the bench and, just basically doing everything on the floor. So I think that it's kind of similar to Bradley Beal in that even though it's probably going to be an inefficient matchup, the minutes are just kind of too good to ignore at that price point when you consider how involved he is in the offense.
Yeah, I like it, man. Lillard at 8,500. That's a discount enough. I think you can get there. Carmelo is someone I feel like I might have a share or 2 of, especially on FanDuel at 5,800, also 5,800 on DraftKings. What do you make of Carmelo coming back?
Yeah, I like the FanDuel price. 23.5% usage rate for Melo since Lillard came back from his injury that coincided with Anthony coming over. So pretty healthy usage for him. Doesn't contribute a ton in the way of peripherals, but the minutes are nice, and the $5,800 price tag, especially on FanDuel, is appealing.
Awesome, man. So got 1 minute here. Final thoughts on the slate.
I really hope the Washington-Miami game doesn't blow out.
All right, so I actually have stats on this blowout thing. I have it as about 15% chance of being a blowout. I mean, that's probably not going to move the needle for you.
No, I'll take 85%.
Yeah, I'll have to get these percentages up on the website here. But
yeah, that's actually awesome because yeah.
So stay tuned for those. All right, guys, we got Chris Baggs and Fast Eddie Fear coming up on Live Before Lock. Thank you guys for all the support. If you're tuning in for the first time, make sure to click the subscribe button and bear with us a little bit. I don't have all the stuff set up, so it might be a little bit of a gap between now and the Live Before Lock. But I'm gonna be watching with you guys. Get this Fast Eddie Fear and Chris Baggs advice. So thanks everyone, and we will see you next week on the Deeper Dive.
Okay, this one's gonna be totally awesome.
Summer I was dressing slowly, passing like the rain that falls on my window, sad and lonely. Wish that I could hear your voice, but it looks like you won't come. But it looks like you won't come. Lying restless, feeling hopeless, listen to the sun. But you're not here by my side, and it looks like you won't come. And it looks like you won't come. But I'm sorry for that, I was never as strong as you, as strong as you. Were all the things that I constantly find, not enough to make you mine. I've been working,
Oh shoot,
working
I
through the
think I'm
pain,
live.
I guess. Making pizzas, washing dishes, for $6 now or less. And it looks like you're not home. And it looks like you're not home. So I'm sorry for that, I was never as strong as you, or as strong as you.
for you, literally producing a show as we speak. So that is why we had a different musical choice today, but hopefully you guys enjoyed it enough. I'm Chris Spags, joined today a special guest on a Friday, a rare Friday treat for you. Thank God it's Friday because we got Fast Eddie Fear. How are you doing, Eddie?
I'm very well. Thank you for asking. How's about you?
I'm good. I'm ready for the slate. I feel like this is a good one, and I think we got enough news beforehand that my lineups are good, and I'm sure that won't ruin it all throughout the course of this next hour.
I hope it does. Again.
Apparently I'm muted, by the way. I don't know if you're muted too.
Wow, so it's an even better show.
Well, not if you're muted too. If it's just
the funny thing is that joke will not land if you're muted.
If we are all muted, it's probably going to be suboptimal.
Are we all
I'm
muted?
doing a silent movie right now.
Okay, that's great because I haven't played charades in a long time. Here we go. If they can hear me, this is going to be great. Okay, 2 words. First word.
Yeah. What is going on here? Okay, are we good? All right. So hopefully you guys can hear us now. I'm not going to do the intro again, but hopefully you guys enjoyed the musical choices, and now we can talk because we got a 10-game slate to dig through.
Pants on today. Although if yesterday was any indicator, it was it's a good day. We had 2 people win 40K or more. One person told me they did my favorite thing, which was, yeah, I just have a translation thing for your letter grade. So I came home, had no time, took your rankings, crunched them, and won 43,000. Thumbs up for that guy. Well done.
I'm also just seeing your pants now on the video. So good job by you wearing pants. I'm also wearing pants. So I don't know if it's going to help or hurt the slate. Eddie, what are your thoughts here? Pants plus or minus EV?
I mean, thus far this year, I think there has been greater. I think it was a pretty good night last night. Not a good night for me. Lost the sports bet, so I'm 2.
I was going to ask about that.
2-1 on personal bets this year. 5-3 on callouts on the stream. I may just retire it there and keep my winning record. Same number of units. We'd be ahead against the Vig, but again, they're in chat. Need me to lose the pants. Do I think Ariza is in play tonight? Unless we got Kings news, I can't. He is in play. If both Kojo and Bogdan play, I would be disinclined towards any of Trevor the Vampire. Got to look that one up. No one's going to get that reference. But Trevor the Vampire, I pine for you. You're not going to get it. It's strong bad. It's before your time. You were 6 years old, but it's critical internet humor.
I do recall Strong Bad and Homestar Runner, but I wasn't huge on it. Like
wow, very nicely done. Yeah, when I was in my first game design job back in, there was we had that. My favorite part was I had him set all my alarm clock for all my meetings was Strong Bad, and there were 3 settings on the alarm clock. There was angry, like normal, and sexy. So I had, if I had a 3 o'clock meeting, if it was set to angry, Strong Bad was like, "Hey, you got a meeting!" And if it was set to sexy, it'd be like, "Oh, it's time for you to go to your meeting."
Really setting the mood, waking up. I mean, I guess you got some things you can take advantage of in the morning.
Yeah. No, those were my midday things. I had them like on the speaker in the office. Gotcha. It's good memories. Good memories.
Yeah, Strong Bad whispering in your ear to wake you up seems a bit odd. Look him up, guys. If you're not familiar, he's a luchador, an animated luchador, I think, technically.
Absolutely correct. With boxing gloves. But
go research your Strong Bads now. But also, one place that it is not bad nor strong is fantasydraft.com, the official home of rake-free DFS. Go to fantasydraft.com right now and use that promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, for your free 7-day trial into the world of rake-free DFS. Check out the Hooters main event, which is still going off for the NFL every Sunday, the largest guaranteed rake-free contest you'll find out there. And at fantasydraft.com, all of the contest entry fees are paid directly to the winners. So go to fantasydraft.com right now, use that promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO, and save yourself on some rake. All right, Eddie, what is the thing that people have to know today? You got a little, you got Ish Smith again. We had him yesterday. That was the big news you needed to know during the course of the show. Now we have advanced notice. Ish's ownership going to be projected extremely high again. What are you doing with Ish today? As again, it's still a cheap play here with no Isaiah Thomas out there.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday, it's important to contextualize a little bit in that was still a very good performance out of Ish Smith. Ish Smith, with no Isaiah Thomas, if you were playing DFS earlier this year, we had lots of Ish Smith playing point guard next to Bradley Beal with no Isaiah Thomas, and it wasn't a guy you windmill slammed, especially in somewhat difficult matchups. Now, yesterday, there was a lot of value, but all of it was pretty dicey. We had, Kenrich opened up. Oh, and I got the Kenrich Williams minutes right. I hit all the minutes things last night. Take that, Alex. I'm sure you're watching the show you're producing. I got you on minutes last night on Kenrich Williams. It's strike one for the people without pants. But yeah, the value was wide, but not deep, as in there was a lot of it. But it was pretty hard to trust. And then all of a sudden you had $3,600 Ish Smith, who I had projected for 36 minutes and 27 fantasy points, I think, which feels great. And I have a pretty similar projection for him tonight. The ownership, I have a feeling, will still be, I don't know about overwhelming. I've had a very busy day.
What do you think the projection is for it right now?
Putting on these pants took a while.
Of course, you got a lot of stuff in there.
So, Jesus, man.
I bet your big booty. What? We all know you had a former career as a music video ho.
I see my reputation precedes
twerking behind Nelly as he was singing about St. Louis.
It's what do I think the ownership would be tonight? It should be comparable to where he ended up yesterday, simply because it's a bigger slate. So I don't think it would move much beyond that. So I'll say 55. I think that's going to be about the number.
We have him at 51 right now on DK and 49 on
really? Interesting. Yeah, so if we get news on
61 on Yahoo, by the way. 61. Yahoo ownership is fun. Mo Wagner, 66 on Yahoo.
I assume he's 10 on
both these guys are minimum price. Yes, Mo Wagner and
Mo Wagner 10. Yeah. Yahoo is very interesting because of their lack of attention to detail. Sorry, there's no other way to call it that. Fine, happy sponsor of the show, but their prices do not react.
Not this show. You're fine. Bash. No, I'm kidding. We love that.
Is that how it works? Is that how it works? Is tonight fantasy draft?
Yeah.
That's all right. Let me tell you guys some things about Super Draft and Yahoo. They meet together and sell children into slavery. I'm just kidding. It's
it's a Friday show, guys.
That's not funny. Yeah, so that feels fine. I suspect, absent other news, I really got to look at some of the other value here. There's a lot of guys. I suspect I would be nominally under that number. I think 40-45% is, and again, I'm mentally building 150 lineups and analyzing everything, so that is somewhat out of my butt, which again, more difficult to do with pants on, but that's somewhat of me, pulling a number out of the sky. But I suspect I'd want to come in a little less than that. He's still the best value play in the slate. There are many more pivots, it being 2.5 times the slate. So I suspect I would want to come in a little under. But again, Ish's career-wise 0.9 give or take fantasy point per minute guy. This is a slightly worse than average matchup, depending on exactly who suits up here. Winslow changes that a little bit, but it's a perfectly equitable spot, and he is appropriately owned as chalky guy. I don't have a strong Ish take as of this moment, other than to say that if we get news that both Bogdan and Corey Joseph are out by that game lock time, which is all the way at 8:00 if you're playing on DraftKings, I do like some of that turning into Yogi, hey boo boo Farrell, who I like him quite a bit and would actually have him projected for about a half a fantasy point more last time I looked at it. And I would suspect lower ownership, although if there's one thing we learned yesterday from Ish Smith, it is the rapidity by which the celerity by which the internet will jump onto a good play when it presents itself, which is a little daunting for me. Like, I consider it sort of my personal goal for these 10, 20, 40, 50 hours a week that I'm doing this job to try to make people as much money as possible. And when that happens, it's like, God damn it, people, you're supposed to be worse than that. Like, we talked about it on the show, but like, I don't like building lineups during the show. I'll tweak a little bit if I have to, if important news breaks, but I really try to just kind of go in done by the time 3 p.m. West Coast time rolls around. And yeah, like, I think the one saving grace used to be that, if I'm doing the show or doing the live stream up until lock, like, people aren't adjusting that much, but that was an insane shift towards Ish where, I mean, he was by far the best value play. I said it instantly when they were like, Isaiah Thomas is out. I'm like, I think Ish is the best value play in the slate. And the more you thought about it, it was clearly by any point per dollar expectation that, but still 55% of entries, it's not people, it's entries, which is important to point out. Getting there that quickly is somewhat dispiriting, but we shall persevere. Sally forth.
So I want to ask you more about this game. First, I just need to reply to the YouTube chat. Chill13LS saying, man is drinking milk. No, I'm drinking eggnog. It is festive right now. I have a Christmas tree behind me, drinking eggnog and cognac to celebrate our friend Josh not being here today, enjoying some time off. But if I'm not going to have Josh in my life on a Friday, I need to have his favorite drinks.
Are they mixed or are you two-fisting it? Eggnog,
No, they are
cognac.
mixed. They are mixed like a gentleman with some ice too. So that way, because
Oh,
throughout the course of the hour,
on the rocks. How
yeah.
cosmopolitan.
Get watered down as we go. But also, all right, let's talk about the rest of the parts of this game because Ish is going to be the one obvious part. We also have some decent value with Kendrick Nunn on the other side.
That's the second one.
Yeah, so he's going to be a guy who'll be pretty highly owned. Projects very well according to Osmo. Bradley Beal also projects one of Osmo's top projected players in terms of raw points and value. There's a lot of guys here, like Jimmy Butler, going to be one of the most popular players on the slate. Looks great in this spot. Yep. What are your priority plays here? How many is too many? And how are you accounting for the potential risk of a blowout here? It's a back-to-back for Washington. Maybe they got into South Beach, enjoyed it a little bit last night. What are you doing here?
I don't know. They're apparently a monster team. They're really good. Like, they can beat anybody. Okay. So, I have no strong take here either. I can discuss the nuances, as I'm sure have been done several times before today. Obviously, not the easiest spot for Washington on the road back-to-back into Miami, which is an excellent defensive team, although they will be down a couple of guys, but obviously showed a scant 24 hours ago that they can gussy up and win in difficult spots. And the prices on at least Ish and Beal are really, really low. And Washington, probably the best matchup all told to face for any team in the NBA, because while they have a woefully bad defense along the lines of, say, Golden State, there's a much better chance that they do keep a game competitive. And so for that reason, there's an appropriate amount of attention going to Miami. So looking at some specific ownership numbers, and God, this game is like 7 in the top 10. All right, so we have Ish at 52%. That feels just fine for me. We have Jimmy Butler at 32%. Yeah, that's low for me if Justice Winslow is out, and maybe even if he's in. He's obviously taken a huge amount of responsibility with Dragic out, and just in general, certainly can smash that number. I think that's a little low. It is a 10-game slate, so 30% position is still very significant, and he's the second highest owned player on the slate, so that still feels a little bit low for me. It's really hard for that not to turn up, especially if Winslow is out. So if Winslow is out, I'd want that number to be almost, I'll go 40% for me, and that's a large statement here. Anthony Davis, I guess people just go like, well, Carmelo's over there on the other side, and he's Anthony Davis, and it's difficult for me to argue that. It's nice that they marked him probable again. I'm actually a fan of the Lakers being more attentive to their injury report and doing that basically every day. Someone told me today it was annoying. I'm like, I appreciate them reassuring us that he's probably going to get out there and play, but 21%, I imagine I would be a little bit lower. That feels about right. Kendrick Nunn, 21%. That feels about right. Bam Adebayo in this game, 21%. That feels about right. Price has come up significantly. No, that's I'm just fine with that. Hachimura, 20.4%. That's probably the first one where I come in pretty significantly under. I like Hachimura quite a bit as a play. Certainly, the minutes look very appealing. But the matchup isn't great. He is not a phenomenally good scorer. I have him tonight for 29 fantasy points, I think, in 39 minutes. I have concerns about the matchup specifically for him, and the price has increased to the point where I don't know how much ceiling is there, but the absence of Jan Mahinmi and the foul propensity of Mo Wagner obviously give him a chance to play oodles of center time, and regardless, he's going to get somewhere in the 40-minute range. So I get it. I imagine I would be closer to 10 to 15%. It's obviously a fine play, but it's a big slate, and as always with these chalk things, I'm sort of envisioning the odds of a downside, and I think it is likely enough for Rui Hachimura, that sixth highest owned player on the slate, is a bit much. Giannis Antetokounmpo, 20%. I love him. I love a lot of Bucks tonight. Like I really like these guys. They're all underpriced. I really like Brook Lopez. Where's Brook Lopez on here? Can I have some scrolling music, please?
He's just
Paul?
6% on DK. So
yeah, I'm a big fan of 5,200. He's my cash center on DK. Put it that way. And this is a slate with Andre Drummond versus Myles Turner, as I give you my obligatory. Myles Turner has nightmares about Andre Drummond, his hulking form entering into his frame. Myles Turner, sleep paralysis, unable to respond. and Andre Drummond drinks his milkshake. It's just a very solid matchup from Drummond. Isn't that expensive. A bit more of a cashy play for me, but fairly appropriately priced. I am projected for over 50, which would be in this matchup a bad matchup for him. I think he's got 55 plus against Myles Turner 4 of the last 5 times they've matched up. I've got him for 51.5 right now, which is just fine at that number. That's a pretty big number. So I don't see Drummond here yet. So I would have more than whatever that number is. But again, I like Brook Lopez a little bit more at 6%. I expected him to be low owned. The more I look at this, I think he is one of the guys who take advantage. But talking on the Bucks for a second there, Yanis, it's very similar to the sort of Embiid thing I talk about a lot with looking at games with him in, games with him out. When you're looking at the Bucks, this is going to be a competitive game. They don't have that many of them. So these guys are all priced for playing 24, 26, 28, 29 minutes, whereas in this game I have most of those same players projected at 28, 30, 32, 34 minutes. So just everybody's priced well too cheap, and I really like the pace in this game. Obviously, there should be a lot of points here. This is a game I'm well attracted to. So probably my order of preference is, I mean, how much I like them versus the field. I don't know where we have Bledsoe. There's Bledsoe at 11%. That's high on a slate like this. That's on the top page. That's like 13th eyeballing it. So I mean,
we just got an ownership update, by the way, 9 minutes ago. So it's at Bledsoe's out at 9 on DK. So he's
even better. He went down there. Yeah, I have trouble not getting too many Bucks in my lineup, and they're not priced as cheaply as many of these other plays that are obviously extremely attractive. We have Larry Nance at 21. I like that number a ton. If Tristan Thompson is out, I probably come in under that if he's in. If Tristan Thompson is out, yeah, I'm a pretty enormous fan of that. Fanduel hard to get to, where I think he's sitting on 66, but 51 on DK deserves that number. That's a fair way to go. I still prefer Kendrick Nunn straight out, and that's knocked. We have a glut of guys between 20 and 22%. Literally the 3rd and 10th most owned players are all in a 2-point band. So we basically have a tie between Hachimura, Nance, Vagner, Davis, Beal, Antetokounmpo, Adebayo, Nunn, Chris Paul, who, yeah, I like that spot pretty significantly. And then Abdul Nader, like, I like him. I ranked him. That's a little bit high. I know we're minus Turd Ferguson, and you know, I'm not sure exactly what happens with those minutes. It makes me like Schroeder a lot, but that's I would not have that much Abdul Nader, but you can certainly get yourself there. I see Schroeder just under that, so nothing terribly gross in the ownership. But we have Hachimura now, the 3rd most owned player on the slate. That's too much for me, just because there are other guys who, if you're playing in a 200,000 entry contest with 20 teams in play, I just think there's other guys who can bang an upside more reliably. I would, for example, prefer Dennis Schroeder against a Minnesota team that has been really poor at guarding players of his ilk quite a bit more. So, as one example.
Is there anything in terms of a blowout build that you do with Washington, Miami, given just the chance that does occur? Obviously not a great spread. We're not in the business of predicting blowouts. All the kind of usual ways that we couch that, but it's a 9-point spread favoring Miami at home, back-to-back for Washington, a tough Miami team who plays good defense. There does seem like there could be some risk, let down spot too, if you want to bust out all the narratives. So if there were a case where somebody wanted to build the blowout build, which of the guys in this game would you say be the most appealing?
It doesn't change a lot for this team. I missed about half your question, but I think you're talking about, guys to play if we are thinking there is a blowout.
Correct.
I would say that like yesterday, both of the players who took down massive GPPs picked up a few shares of Monty Morris, who was one of the guys that I ranked thinking, okay, there's a real chance this game blows out, but there's plenty of good players who don't need that, and it's a 10-game slate, not a 4-game slate. So I am much less inclined to roll the dice on the fortunes of any given game, I should say. That stipulated, Meyers Leonard, who I already have some appeal for, I would be a little more interested in that scenario. Tyler Hero, I think would still be perfectly fine and would be on the court in that scenario. But it's not something that, first of all, I'm fairly interested in playing around in this environment. But that changes a ton for either of these teams at the moment with the limited rosters they have already. So I wouldn't take it into account in this specific situation.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. Yeah, to me, I do have a couple builds with guys like Chris Chiozza in there, just out of the concern that perhaps this game does go sideways, given the reasons I just talked about.
Yeah, I can't get to it.
Okay, yeah, for me,
it's just like I like Chris Chiozza as a player. I think he's just fine. I don't know if it was Chiozza. We had this exact conversation last night about someone. I don't think it was Chiozza, but we had the exact conversation last night.
It wasn't about Monty Morris. It was the top value play on the slate. Him and Mason Plumlee really broke everything yesterday.
Yeah, and I ranked them both reasonably aggressively for that reason. I thought that game might go sideways, and I ranked the 4 Denver guys who really can go off in that scenario. It was Justin Robinson.
Yeah, we talked about that. We talked
about it, and you were like, I'm kind of interested, and I'm like, I don't think you should have any interest, and I still feel the same way about Chris Chiozza. Like, you need this game to go awfully sideways, and he has to do very well in limited time in a bad matchup where, like, is it? I don't think he's an insane play. Let me be clear. If you're playing 150 lineups and you're telling me you have 4 Chris Chiozzas, he's like minimum price. That's fine. Maybe you Lonnie Walker this crap, which it would be somewhat similar to. It wouldn't be that far off the field. But I think the overwhelming scenario is that he plays 15 minutes and he's just not super fantasy producer, and it's not a great matchup. Like, you would need it to go really weird. I would much rather play one of the guys I would expect to be more involved. I would rather play Isaac Bonga. I would rather play Troy Brown, who was very good yesterday in the 18 minutes they gave him or what have you. But like, I would Chiozza. I'm just not sure, barring a blowout, if he gets more. Like, I think you're dead without the blowout is kind of what I'm saying. I think there are other guys you can play where you're alive even with the blowout, and you can get, for example, I think Troy Brown had like 22, 24.
Like a Ty Jerome yesterday, I think is who you're thinking of.
Something like that. We had a conversation with Ty Jerome, although the Cam Johnson thing certainly worked out as well. And yeah, I'm not surprised by that. There had been I had read someone else had written where they were like, I don't like Cam Johnson because he's just going to back up Kelly Oubre. So I made sure to say on the show, no, they're talking about him, and as that year goes on, and as long as guys stay hurt, I expect him to start moving him around and him playing some other positions. And he did. He played a couple positions yesterday, not just as a straight backup. He got some 30 minutes, I think, at 2 different spots. But Chris Chiozza, I think the most likely scenario is plays 13 minutes of backup point guard. And I just think there's other guys I'd rather go to in that spot. Can he get there? Obviously, that can happen. So I don't think it's nuts, but I did not rank him. He would not make my 150. I don't think it's insane if he makes yours. Yeah,
for me, it was just more of it's one of the things I like to do for a handful, like literally less than a handful of lineups. Whenever I have an overexposure to a couple parts, I like to usually try to hedge if I can, just for a few of them. So that was what I did. And in the blowout builds I did have Silva as my big there. And I did have Chiozza as the guys who I thought would benefit the most from a blowout. But none also benefits, as you mentioned, Harrell, he's out there too, who does benefit pretty well from a blowout in terms of seeing run. And he actually does usually extend from like midway in the third when he comes in, and he'll run throughout the entire fourth quarter.
Yep.
So that's those are a couple guys I would think to go to. But as you mentioned, I agree. Like, on a slate of this size, not a play I would want a ton of, but I had enough lineups in today where I figured I'd play a handful of that. And
sure.
That's what
I like Mo Wagner more than Larry Nance Jr. if Tristan Thompson is in as a point of reference. Assuming they're going to be similarly owned, I would actually go back to Mo today after being really anti-Mo yesterday. I was close to the minutes on that one. I think I said 23. He got up to 24, 25, 26. And someone was giving me crap for he didn't foul out. Yeah, but he missed like 7 minutes due to foul trouble.
I don't think he was in foul trouble. He got his fouls late in that game. He went out because he just wasn't playing that well, I think, in the third quarter. I was looking at the popcorn machine like an hour ago.
I'm almost positive he got in foul trouble, but I'll check. I would not be the first time I'm wrong. I again was crying in my Cheerios most of that game. I gave back every cent I won on Orlando over Washington, unfortunately. Let me see when his fouls came.
2 fouls in the second. He picked up a third foul in a stint in the third quarter, but it was the third quarter.
And he did not come out after his second foul in the second quarter. So I think you're correct. Yeah, he did not come out after his fouls.
He
So
came out because Bertans was so hot. Like Bertans is the one who came in directly for him, and then Bertans, I think, bricked a couple. And
Sure, but I mean, both times he came out, one was for Bonga and the other left Bonga in there. So I mean, that's a really. I'm glad this came up. I was just sort of shooting the shit there for a second, but it's really relevant for the fact that I, at least, overestimated the necessity of having him out there.
Mhm.
Like if he played 25 minutes and some change, not largely or at all due to foul trouble. Well, that's concerning for me. I would have thought with, now there's no Mahinmi, so I think we can again extend that confidence a little bit. But that's actually, I'm glad you corrected me, an incredibly relevant factoid that I think, I'll just speak for myself. I presumed that yesterday he was going to play as many minutes as they could throw at him to stop them from killing either Hachimura or Mahinmi, and apparently that wasn't the case. Like they chose to bring him out and play those other guys. So that is relevant for me, and that's enough for me to actually reverse my previous statement that I would prefer him to Nance with Tristan Thompson in, because I am envisioning some sort of 30x minute upside, and again, that's maybe more possible today with no Mahinmi out there, but. That would be enough. I still like him just fine as a play. There's a very real upside for him. Even in 28 minutes, Mo Wagner at 5K can get you 40 fantasy points. So I'm by no means saying issue him entirely, but that's a particularly important detail there. So thanks for correcting me.
Yeah, and to be clear, like I did a lot of Mo Wagner research because I was I wouldn't say confused by his game yesterday. It was a tough spot, not, as you mentioned, not an ideal one where there was some foul risk and just some general ineffectiveness risks. But he is a 1.1 fantasy point per minute player with Beal on the court, which I was kind of worried he's one of those guys who just does well in the second units. Once he gets Beal's usage in his life, he just falls apart. Not really the case.
No, he's a perfectly good offensive player. Back to Laker time. Like I'm a Mo fan, but that is really interesting that's how they played that in that situation.
So you kind of adjusted your take on Nance throughout that process and talked about him a little bit earlier. People in the chat are talking about Nance now.
Yep.
Actually, and here's two questions I think we can dovetail together. Darth Bain asking who would be your pivots to Hachimura on Fanduel now that you talked about perhaps not wanting as much of the field on him. But would Nance be a pivot now to Hachimura? Who would be the pivots then if not Nance?
They are pretty similarly. On Fanduel, they're different positions, I think. First of all, let me just double check this. I don't want to get this wrong. No, they are both power forwards on Fanduel. So there you go. I thought I was just a Nance being. I saw his price today. I did not see his position. Obviously, I'm fine. Nance at 6,600 in a bad matchup. I really want to have Tristan Thompson out. Like at that point, I think he's a very solid play, even on FanDuel at 6,600, and an outstanding play on DraftKings at 51. And it's worth pointing out this is the third time. This is the third time this year that we've had a Magic Cavalier game. So there is some degree of study here, and we had a perfectly fine Larry Nance game in the first one, and that was with both Love and Tristan Thompson in. And then in the second one, I think Love sat and he did a little. I'm just going to download my database, but he accorded himself fairly well. One sec, here it is. All right, first game, both Love and Tristan Thompson were in. They played 33 and 36 minutes. Lions played 27 anyway and had 30 fantasy points. Second game, Kevin Love was out. And again, these are reasonable simulacrums for the situation we're looking at tonight. So this seems worth discussing. Right, that was this game. Colin Sexton got all the way up to 36. Tristan Thompson had 38. Larry Nance had 32. And I would still probably prefer Jordan Clarkson to, I think my order of interest in the Cavs, if Tristan Thompson is in, would be still barely Nance, Thompson, Sexton, Clarkson, Osman, and then bump everybody up a spot, obviously, if Tristan Thompson is out. It's obviously not a great matchup, but if both those bigs are out, there is just going to be enough usage to go around, and they have to play 48 minutes. And it is a spot where you could get kind of nobody being good, but Nance feels really good, and I'm really not surprised in that given situation if you get Colin Sexton paying off his price tag, or hypothetically Darius Garland could even get there. Again, he'd be pretty low on the list for me, but Jordan Clarkson may take 15 shots and 9 threes. Like I would get fairly well exposed to these guys if both those players are out, because those minutes are going to have to amortize. Everybody drink across the lineup.
Also, Thompson is officially in. So,
there we go. We answered that question. So, not a ton of interest in anybody else. I do think now it is fine to take shots on a couple of those other guys still. If you want to play a Chetty Osman share or two, I would have some in 150 lineups. If you wanted to play a Colin Sexton, I think that's fine. And again, like this happened. Colin Sexton had 36 against Orlando without Kevin Love. Like, it already occurred once, and that's a reasonable outcome. I would have very little. It is still a very poor matchup, and it is a giant slate. So even when you're like, if he repeats that performance and 5,200 or whatever it is, Colin Sexton gives me 36, that's pretty good. But it's like barely good enough to be in a winning lineup on this slate. So like, you would need things to go extremely well. But glad we got that Tristan news. I got to update my news feed.
So we got some questions here in the premium Slack. We should burn through real fast. Not doing either ors right now. Just looking for general questions about the slate, guys. Brian Peel asking, who would be your favorite pay down option at center on FanDuel for a GPP?
Brook Lopez. Can I have Brook Lopez? He's even
I'll
better.
allow it.
He's even better priced on FanDuel. He's 56, just better than 52 on DK. I will give you another answer in the event that's too expensive for you, that you can't afford those church-going socks at $350. I have a feeling it's Meyers Leonard, but I'm gonna take a look through everyone. All right, here's centers, all the way down, sir. I think you're on Meyers Leonard. Yeah, Meyers Leonard's minimum price, so it would be Meyers Leonard for me pretty clearly. There's no one else really that low that I'm, with Tristan, and that kills the rest of that. So yeah, Meyers Leonard.
And while we're dumpster diving, Mike Baker asking, any cheap power forward on FanDuel in play for you?
John Henson. Ooh, get him in there, 3,600. Also, Christian Wood, 3,900. He's not going to be on today. I'm a fan of Christian Wood, but he's not going to be on. Like, he just has enough of an upside that when he's 1-2% owned on giant slates, I never have an issue with a share or two. I'm not suggesting you windmill slam Christian Wood, but those two come to mind offhand. But especially FanDuel scoring for John Henson. He was part of the original Bucks team wind farm alongside, I think Larry Sanders was on that team, and Yanis was on that team. You would occasionally see those three guys standing next to each other, and they look like a wind farm. That's because they have long arms.
Why did Larry Sanders disappear? I know he had some drug stuff and some whatever, but
he had actually some mental issues as well. He had anxiety and a couple other things, I think, which
the Royce White special.
I hope he gets what he needs. He's hardly the only one.
I've seen him in the media recently, so I was just curious if there was something I didn't know.
I think you can play Skal Labissiere in the event of some sort of massive blowout. I'd like the Lakers a lot in that game. I think you can play Jeremy Grant. He just said, give me some cheap power forwards, so I'm listing cheap power forwards. Those are the guys under about 4,500 that I wouldn't be adverse to seeing in a GPP lineup or two.
A question from Elusive Smoke, more of a strategy question. Can you give a game plan of the best way to build to maximize late swap to take advantage of the Kings news that we do not have yet? Of course, talking about the questionable Bogdan Bogdanovic and in particular the questionable Corey Joseph.
Right. Well, so the Kings game is at 8:30, I believe. So you can currently have one other game I really like, and in the Clippers and Milwaukee, and one game only that antecedes it in the Lakers and Portland, which is the sole late night hammer. For a 10-game slate, it's very interesting. We have 9 games within an hour and a half of lock. It's very top heavy. So I'll start with the obvious. Put all the players in your lineup as chronologically as you can, top to bottom, whenever possible. Like, I'm looking at my placeholder lineup, which, since I don't enter it into anything, I don't always do this, but my bottom 3 players are playing in Oklahoma City, Milwaukee, and Milwaukee. So the most important thing, I guess, is make sure none of them are at 7 o'clock, because you're doing lots of valuable stuff. You're listening to the show. Maybe you're entering some contests. Maybe you're doing some research of your own. that's great. Just make sure none of your bottom 3 guys, if possible, are in games that start at 7 o'clock. That's probably the most important thing. And then after that, you should fire drill it for likely scenarios. Like, okay, let's assume, I mean, you can look at these. Let's assume Bogdan and Corey Joseph are out, and I want to immediately get to Yogi. ... This is what I would do. So I think that's really it. It has a lot to do with how many sites you're playing and how many lineups you're playing on those sites. But as a DraftKings specific answer, those are really the 2 most important things. And be diligent and never, ever give up the opportunity to improve through late swap, even when nothing goes free. 99% of players and 90% of great players don't optimize to optimize. Don't optimize to react to how the slate is going to, especially if you play in cash. If you play in tournaments, likely all your guys were already pretty high upside guys. But if you're playing in cash and you took a stand on a guy in a 7 o'clock game, and this is one reason, by the way, as sort of an advanced strategy note, I was happier to take stands in cash on 7 p.m. guys because I could react to them later where I could late swap. And what I mean by that is if you build a cash lineup and you have you put a guy in it who you don't think is super cash viable, you don't think will be owned a lot. I'll say you put let me look at the 7 p.m. games tonight and think of a guy. Let's assume you put Malcolm Brogdon in your cash lineup, which I think is just fine. And he's just fine in your GPP lineup too. Again, we've had several. This is actually the 4th game of the year for the Pacers and the Pistons. I think it's their 4th game already. I think this is the swan song for these 2 teams.
Oh.
So I will not get to bring up my Andre Drummond, Myles Turner thing again. That's it. I'm gonna have to put it on ice until possibly the postseason, but more likely 2020. Where was I? Sorry, I got excited, and then Eminem lyrics were flowing through my head and stuff. So if you had Malcolm Brogdon in your lineup, who is not going to be heavily owned in cash, though I think he's just fine there and has been good in the Pacers games. Yeah, he is against the Pistons. Yeah, he's been very good. And he comes out crappily. You think you're pretty chalky from there on out, you should switch off some cash. You should take, let's see, from later games, you should take Yanis and Paul George and turn them into Kawhi and LeBron. That probably about maths out. In fact, that's just about perfect, I think. I think you'd have a little extra money left over. But you just make a double swap where 2 guys are slightly worse, but far less chalky, because if you don't, and you play the cash and everyone else plays the cash, and you played Malcolm Brogdon in all your 50-50s, and he went out and only gave you 22 somehow, you're probably going to lose everything. So again, that's advanced strategy, and it also depends on you being willing to sit at your computer and constantly review crap like this. And that is tiring, and I don't mean to act like that isn't a real ask. But if you're doing that, and you're constantly looking at your lineups and sitting on your computer or phone, tablet, whatever device you happen to be using, and you're not occasionally doing something like that, especially in cash. In tournaments, it's harder because, again, most of your guys always had upside. It's not as important, but you're leaving money on the table.
Also, Andrew Wiggins and Karl-Anthony Towns are both now officially game time decisions. Not a lot of ownership expected for him now, but does that give you any sort of lean? I mean, would you want to put any of them in there in the hopes that they play? Because it seems like it could be an appealing spot, given that Oklahoma City does project pretty well for a lot of people.
Well, yeah, they do project well, but you're going to be looking at a reasonably solid butt whooping if both those players are out. Probably. Again, we just saw that Philadelphia-Washington game that I'm still scarred from on several levels, apparently. But it's not a bad spot whatsoever for Towns. So I'm very interested in getting myself some Karl-Anthony Towns. I'm fine to go here or there on Wiggins, who is apparently a little more the worse for wear of the 2 of them anyway. Even on not lock swap, no late swap sites right now, I'm a fan of playing some Josh Okogie. I don't mind the matchup for him at all. He's probably safe regardless of Wiggins' status to play 27, 28 minutes. Wiggins goes out. He's one of the guys who's really going to benefit. Not a huge fan of playing the price on Culver unless you know one or both of those guys are out. And if in the event that you get those guys out, yeah, Gorgie Jang first obviously comes to mind as someone, again, you'd like to get some exposure to. And then, Jordan Bell becomes in play. Jake Layman is out as well, so Trevion Graham could grab some ownership. Jeff Teague would open up, would probably end up starting and have a monster upside. So, yeah, pay close attention, kids. There's a lot of good things that could happen there.
Who would you be comfortable to give more exposure to on FanDuel at point guard besides Ish? So let's say if you were going to fade Ish, what would you do at point guard on FanDuel?
I am fine playing Yogi Ferrell right now at $3,700. I want one of those two guys out. If they're both in, you're going to be looking ugly. It's not going to go good. All of a sudden, I'm looking at you getting, 12 minutes and not necessarily a ton of usage. So it's a gamble, but I'm fine doing that right now. Sans news. Past that, guys who tickled my fancy. I haven't looked at this a lot, so I'm actually just going to take 20 seconds to see if anything jumps to mind, and hopefully we can move on to some. I like my boy Zach Levine again tonight. Not a super duper windmill slam spot, and largely it's just because of the price. I really like him in this spot, but the other few times we called his name and he came forth and gave us 50 or 55 at like 4% ownership. He was also like $7,000, $7,300. That number has continued to rise ever since he got into it with his coach and just said, "Screw you, coach. I'm going to go out there." And he went into business for himself. Business was a booming. Derek White is a perfectly tolerable play for me. Not trying to get there. Chris Dunn. Again, you have no Thad, who thankfully they had largely stopped playing at the 3 and we're not intending to do so, but still no Chandler Hutchinson. Absent foul trouble, this is a pretty stellar matchup. He's still $5,000 on FanDuel. I don't hate Kobe White against the Warriors. I think that's just fine as a tournament play, but I would rather play Chris Dunn, who again is a steals specialist. He's not just a steal specialist. Guy does a lot, but $5,000 is good price. The cash play obviously is Kendrick Nunn at 5,100.
Tyler Hitchcock, by the way, had sent in a super chat. Thank you, Tyler. Was asking about Levine, but just to clarify, his price on DK you find appealing, or his price on FanDuel?
I find them both tolerable and would probably be over the field expectancy. I'm not shocked to get 50, 55, 60 out of him in this spot, but it's a giant slate. There's probably 20 players who I would have roughly the same odds of hitting their ceiling games. I would want more than are there, but it's not one of those days where the field was going to be 5% and I would want 30. This is one of those days where the field is going to be 3% and I would want 8, to clarify it a little better. And I'm pulling 3% completely out of my butt. I will look up a Zach Levine number.
Another super chat,
higher.
by
Field, by the way, is currently listed at 8. So it's more popular than I thought. And again, he has popped off, significantly 3 of his last 5 games. So I would intentionally make sure that I had more than that. But again, I would have 12 instead of 8. I wouldn't go crazy.
Dull Lemon in the YouTube chat with a Canadian $2. So give a slightly less good answer according to the exchange rate. Asking Chetty or a Kogi for a DK GPP. Which of those two would you prefer?
We call that a toonie.
Oh, it's
right. $1 is a loony. $2 is a toonie. Put some poutine on it. It'll be just fine. I would play a Kogi.
Okay. Got another either or here in the premium Slack. I'll burn through a few of these real fast. Nance, Rui, or Bertans? What would you do for Brian in the premium Slack?
I want to take a quick check on ownership to make sure that I'm not missing anything significant as far as this goes. We have Nance and Rui pretty close to tied. We have Bertans, I assume, well lower, which he should be. He does not do a ton. I have not been a huge fan of his, and he's looked very good this week and deserves credit for that. From a raw point sensibility, I think, hold on, I did one with no love, but with Tristan. I have Nance 1 point higher than Rui Hachimura. So at roughly similar ownership, I would probably have Nance, Hachimura, Bertans, but a fairly narrow band between the 3 of them. Bertans has shot extremely well and made a lot of 3-pointers. He has a much more evident floor than, say, Hachimura, for example. So I would be, very careful there. But again, 7% is a third of what the other 2 are sitting at. So I don't have a strong preference in GPPs, but I guess it would be Nance, Hachimura, Bertans in that order.
Lori in the premium Slack asking thoughts on going double center on DK cash with Lopez and either Bam or Drummond.
I have no issue with playing any of those players in cash. And again, Lopez is, in my opinion, significantly underpriced. I think Brook Lopez can give you 40, 50 fantasy points tonight. So I just think he is well underpriced. And again, we had this game previously this year in LA. This is the revenge game these teams played a while ago. And we got a very good game out of Brook Lopez. I believe it on unsustainable blocks, if memory serves. But he had a very solid game there. And he's just priced for playing 21 minutes, and I have him at 29 minutes tonight. So it's just an incredibly underpriced, and the pace is there. And if you're going at this Clippers team, there's not a lot of spots I like. And one of them is Brook Lopez, who can't be adequately covered at all by Ivica Zubac, and not very well by Montrezl Harrell, who, by the way, I love also. $6,500 Montrezl Harrell I have as my second priority, for example, on DraftKings on the Clippers. I would go Paul George and then Montrezl Harrell and then Kawhi Leonard and then Lou Williams and then I guess Patrick Beverley as far as my order of those guys. It's also a very good spot for Montrezl Harrell. Has been a few times against Brook Lopez, and I'm going to go grab the box from earlier this year, which was, again, a Kawhi ducking Yanis game. So it's not a perfect approximation. And obviously Harrell got extra usage in that game, but I watched it twice because it was a really good game. Montrezl Harrell, 13 for 25 from the field, 34 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, and a block. So yeah, he had 60 some odd fantasy points. I don't project him anywhere near that. I have him a hair under 40, but at $6,500, that still feels very good. And there is an upside, and it is a nightmarish spot for Ivica Zubac. So I'm very secure in Harrell's minutes. And you saw that in this game that I'm looking at, by the way, where Zubac got 9 and Harrell got 39. So big fan of Montrez as well, someone I would want to be heavily exposed to.
Rabashua is one of our smarter guys in the premium Slack, saying the Clippers-Milwaukee game sports the best defensive rating of any on the slate, average defensive rating of 101. We also have Paul George, Defensive Player of the Year candidate last year, and Kawhi Leonard defend Yanis. He's full fading Yanis. Do you feel like he is insane today to be doing that?
No, of course not. It's 10 game slate. You can full fade any player. 10 game slate, you can full fade any player. Because again, this is sort of an inverse corollary of the whole whether you should stack games on short slates or long slates. There's just so many players. So the only time you get destroyed for full fading a guy is if he goes completely and totally nuts and nobody else does. So like you are screwed if Yanis goes off and gets 85 and nobody else exceeds 65. Yes, you've dug yourself a hole, but the likelihood of both those things happening is small enough. And the price is so great. And you just know there's going to be multiple 5, 6, 7K players. You get 40, 45, 50. There's any number of ways you can compete anyway. So no, if you're not feeling Giannis and you're like, look, they have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard out there who are really good world-class defenders. I spent some time on this morning, and my conclusion is that I still do like Giannis. He is still too cheap. The benefit of the extra minutes I find more likely in this game versus what we've seen versus the price. I still think he is a very good play, and that your correct approximation that they have some excellent defensive options for him is muted slightly by their inability to adequately guard the paint at times, where Giannis is a train coming down the hill, and nobody playing center for this team is going to be a cow to throw it off the tracks to go full 18th century pioneering, whatever I did there, 19th century, I should say. But it's no, I don't think it's crazy at all to just be like, yeah, I think they can keep him contained, and he's wicked expensive. There's a massive upside for Anthony Davis and Bradley Beal and Montrezl Harrell, and I would make sure I'm playing Eric Bledsoe, number 1. Then I would make sure I'm playing Brook Lopez, number 2. But then let him go. Like I would overexpose myself to those guys because I believe Milwaukee is actually favored in this game. But unless your theory is that the Bucks get destroyed, someone is going to have to put up some points in this matchup. I have Middleton as a pretty far fourth for me, by the way. I know there are people who have him as like their number 2 on this team. There are people who have him as their number 1 on this team. I was watching someone on Twitter earlier today. It was like, I think the key piece here is this. I would rather play him than Bledsoe, Lopez, and Antetokounmpo. I think that's crackers because this is a guy who is not nearly as able to do the things that say Giannis does. And if we have very intelligent people like Rabashua in our chat talking about fading Giannis because of the difficulty of running in there on the wings against those guys, I do not get the love for a also minute suspect, Chris Middleton, and who is at best third best at creating his own shot on this team. I don't mind playing some Chris Middleton. Again, I'm a big fan of the Bucks in this spot. They are all too cheap, but there's also a minutes exactly how much time he's going to get consideration that comes into here. So I have Middleton actually fourth on my Bucks train, and I still ranked as an A in GPPs, just to give you some context there. But I have Yanis, Bledsoe, and Lopez all pretty significantly above him.
All right, let's burn through some of these questions here. So just soundbite me on the answers. Harrow, Nunn, and Butler, too much for a 3-entry GPP?
Chris Hero. Or
Chris Hero, the pro wrestler.
Chris Hero, yeah. Tyler Hero, Nunn, and Butler. No, that's not too much.
Thoughts on playing Braun and Davis together on FanDuel?
I would also want to play, if possible, really Damian Lillard, but I don't know if that's even necessary. And I would have trouble justifying it. I don't think it's an invalid lineup construction. I think it's fine if you have it and you like it, knock yourself out. I do think they pretty significantly negatively correlate, but I'm obviously a big fan of the matchup and Melo being out there and ... There's any number of ways in which they can both get there, but it's not them getting there. Like, can I see the game where they collectively score 135 fantasy points? Yeah, I can see that happening. I'm not even sure that ends up being good enough at those prices. Like, it's tough.
Got a question here about some guys you said you had a preference for.
Sure.
Would you prefer Brook Lopez over Montrezl or the other way around?
Well, God, we have them both owned at 5%. Jiminy Christmas. Yeah, I would probably be triple on both of them. I don't have a preference. That's really tough for me. At their prices, I mean, if price is somehow not a consideration, if this is a Yahoo question or something, then play Montrezl Harrell. I haven't projected higher. But at their prices, they're two of my favorite guys on the slate. So, whatever makes you feel like the other pieces feel better. I'd be inventing a take for the purpose of good TV. I don't have.
Schroeder and Wagner or Brook Lopez and Ish? No site given.
Schroeder and Wagner is 10-7. Brook Lopez and Ish is 8-8 on DK. FanDuel, they don't add up either. So I'm guessing this is some Yahoo, and it matters for the scoring and the blocks and things of that nature. I would slightly prefer the Schroeder side.
But Butler and, as this is spelled, Hachumari or Brogdon and Harrell on DK?
Brogdon and Harrell.
All right. Thoughts on Jokic at 8,500 on FanDuel for your boy Renpack?
I like him a lot. Nikola Jokic has 3 triple-doubles this year. They are against Phoenix, Dallas, and Boston, where he went off for 60-some-odd fantasy points. He is largely matchup independent. Again, there are a number of guys on this slate. Brook Lopez, Andre Drummond, Montrezl Harrell, frequently centers, not exclusively, who are really easy to predict. Jokic is not. Setting aside his general malaise and lack of interest in playing basketball some evenings, he also just frequently has very good games and not particularly ideal matchups. So yes, 2% Nikola Jokic, who can randomly pop off for, I think he had about 65 in that game, and it's obviously a possibility, as it happened not that long ago. Yeah, I like it. I think it is overall incentivized. Again, for all players, there is a ownership they should be. Jokic will be half of his, 2% versus 4%. But yeah, I like it. I think it's just fun. But I guess pointing out that had happened, I see no particular impingement to it happening. I'm fine with Jokic. I'm fine with Jamal Murray, and I don't even hate Paul Millsap. Looked very good last night. Minutes in the last game round. The blowout was again predictable, but I think you can go back there again. I think it's more of a him game than, say, a Jeremy Grant game. Not one of the games where I think he gets listed for Jeremy.
King Gill asking, do you have any takes on LaMarcus Aldridge or Aaron Gordon for a DK cash game?
Cash.
Yeah. Like Gordon's too priced up and not owned enough for cash. I don't mind.
I don't worry about like owned for cash. I hear that a lot where people are like, I don't want to play this guy. I haven't projected higher, but he's only 2% owned. Like, I never quite got that. I hear that from a lot of people I respect, and ergo, I assume again, I am wrong. But I hear a lot of people going, I'm worried about this guy. Like, I would be more concerned with the Spurs rotation and Aldridge's, health and minutes. And now I don't think Aaron Gordon is going to shoot 13 for 15 from the field in the last game or whatever the heck it was. I don't think that's going to happen a lot. So I'm still going over it. It's very close for me. I think I still end up on Aldridge. But ownership for me, especially on a 10 game slate, by the way, like, again, ownership is not important. The inverse of ownership is important. If a guy's 60% owned versus 40% owned, that is a massive difference. If LaMarcus Aldridge is 9% owned and Aaron Gordon is 3% owned, I consider that irrelevant in cash and not terribly relevant in GPP.
Well, I think it's more for me, just whenever I play cash, just like it's more of a hero play to be picking Aaron Gordon to 2% when you could go to, I don't know who the price point pivot would be, but let's say Fournier is the same price and he's going to be 25% owned. Like, I'd rather take the guy who's going to be with the field because then that makes it a 7 versus 7, and I feel like I can handle that well enough. So that's the reason I think usually your following ownership is, that's the ownership is going to be where the field is. So obviously, like,
okay, I think that's fine. I do not think that is crippling or terribly bad for you in any way. Presented with the same situation, I would be like, you know what? I like this guy for 2 more points at 2% owned than that guy at 25% owned. I think I can win the thing right here. Like, sweet, I'm going to make this pivot instead of that one and pass 25% of the field. Like, I don't know. I would handle it a different way.
Okay.
Your way sounds.
I think it's
fine.
a bad chalk, good chalk thing, but I think that's sort of the way that I would lean on it. Last question here for FanDuel: Aaron Gordon or Nance for a FanDuel GPP?
Yeah, Nance.
All right, and one more: Butler, Leonard, and Olynyk, or Butler, Leonard, and Bam for a FanDuel. You could have just said Bam or Olynyk. It was an inefficient question.
It's also FanDuel GPP where they're priced thousands away from each other. So I will say Bam, being I imagine it is a miswritten question. I'm just
don't give me a 3v3 where 2 of the guys are the same. That's not what 3v3s are.
I'm scanning for news, but I think we are just
locked,
on lock.
Yeah, we got no Yogi news. We do not know that yet.
I will hang out in the premium Slack for the next hour up until at least the 8 o'clock game, so that we can handle anything that comes up. And I expect some news will break, so hopefully we can fix it.
Also, people have questioned the Tristan Thompson news. I think one reporter put it in, but he wasn't anybody from local media. I saw people quoting that earlier, so I don't know if it hasn't come through Fantasy Schmabs yet, so I don't know that it's officially been confirmed the way that we would like, but that was from some guy who was verified, but I don't know if he's actually somebody important enough to know that Tristan Thompson's in. Let's pull up ownership, do a quick round of daddy likes.
Yeah, that's my fault. I should have noted that I didn't I have 3 official news feeds, which are kicking things in that come up as alerts, and it didn't come up there. And I didn't notice because, again, we're doing 80 things and I'm looking at all kinds of stuff as it comes down. But when you said Tristan Thompson in and I hadn't seen it, I'd like to think I'd noticed that. And
I thought one of our guys got it in early, but it doesn't seem. I mean, look, I feel like somebody lying about that is verified to be a bit of a weird move, but who knows? All right, we got some ownership here, and we have some really interesting ownership for one player particularly popping up above the rest. But guys, hit that like button, please, because Daddy Likes is presented by your amount of likes. The words are both in those things. So go support us, hit that like button now. And also go check out fantasydraft.com. They're here for you all NFL weekend. Their main slates are closed for NBA right now, but they do have NBA slates as well. Go check them out. Check out the Hooters main event, the largest rate-free DFS contest you will find industry-wide for the NFL's Week 14. Go to fantasydraft.com right now and use that promo code AWESEMO, AWESEMO. And also, if you want to catch Eddie in the premium Slack, use that promo code Live Before Lock for half off your first month of Awesemo Plus. If you go to awesemo.com/join right now, you can use that promo code for half off your first month, or find packages as low as $3.95 a week on there. So go to awesemo.com/join and check those out. All right, Eddie, the DK fadeaway is the big tournament today, the Friday fadeaway. I'm going to presume it's $15 because many fadeaways are from 15 feet out. They've really not been putting the effort in the rhyme and reason of their number games recently. But we do have ownership. Who is the number one player, Eddie, do you think, out of these early games?
We have the Cleveland game, the Detroit-Indiana game.
And I think that's it. Oh, and Charlotte-Brooklyn.
I thought there was a third. Right, Charlotte-Brooklyn, which will be under-owned, by the way. These are a couple.
Yeah. Dinwiddie is a guy we didn't talk about at all. But
these are a couple of crappy. Yeah, I didn't have a strong take relative to the field. Again, and also if you sign up for Awesemo, you can get yourself in premium Slack real quick where I'm answering questions all day, and I'll hang out for the next hour because news will break, and that's I say this again and again. I love chaos, and the more chaos, the more it comes out closer to lock. And handling it well is critical to your success. Period. Like I think you should be rooting for late scratches every day. If you are paying attention and watching basketball every day and listening to people who know what they're talking about and know your rotations and know what's going on, it allows you to separate from people who are otherwise using probably fairly similar projections to what you're using and reading the same Twitter and watching the same shows, many of which have thousands of listeners and are free every day. So yeah, you got to find an edge, and it can be really difficult sometimes. So yeah, I'm pro chaos.
Also, wait, when we got a super chat real fast, which we can do before we do Daddy Likes.
Sure.
Jack Perry saying, thanks, guys. Boban and Rey Mysterio Jr. versus Isaiah Thomas and Andre the Giant in the steel cage match. Who wins? I'm going to assume if we're going to say everybody's alive for this one, I would favor Andre the Giant's team because Boban got killed very easily by John Wick. Spoiler alert. So that would be my lean. But Eddie, who would be your pick?
No, I need to know a couple of things. Even if Andre, all right,
Is escape allowed? That's a big question too.
I need some data here. Right. Okay. So they're in a steel cage. Can you win by escaping over the cage? Because if you can win by escaping over the cage, Ray is getting out of the cage and they win.
Well, IT's pretty fast too, though. I don't know.
Doesn't matter. You can't stop. Ray is a brick house. Like since he got off the juice, Rey Mysterio is not as much of a beef muffin as he used to be. That is a big dude.
But we're talking about like a 29-year-old, 30-year-old professional athlete against Ray, who's like 45 now, 46, somewhere in that range.
That's absolutely right. That's about the right. I think that's about the right age for him.
I would think IT. Like I think an NBA player, like I'd give him if we were escape rules, I would think IT could escape faster if he's okay, like climbing things.
Yeah, that's one of those guys is getting out of the cage. I'll put it that way. So that would have a lot to do with it. The other two guys would be kind of close to irrelevant. How old is Andre? Because, from Grenoble in the French Alps, 20-year-old Andre the Giant, full Jared Allen fro, was pretty quick. He wasn't, Big Show Paul White before he put on the pounds quick, but he was reasonably quick. If you're talking about, barely could stand 1988 Princess Bride Andre the Giant, he's a massive liability. So I have to know how old Andre is, because literally the last 4 years of his life, Andre the Giant could barely move, and that's not going to do anything for you. Now he might, if he gets his hands on Boban, that would be interesting. But you have. It really depends what age Andre is and can you escape. So please reformat your question, including these vital details, and then we'll take another swing at it.
Yeah, please super chat that back in with the updated details.
Yeah, super chat that back in. You got to pay for this every time. You got a good 2-minute answer on your question there. I name dropped all kinds of wrestlers and stuff.
All right, so who's number one on DK's $15 fadeaway, and what is the ownership for this person?
I feel like I'm missing a game. There's the Cavs. There's the Cavs and the Magic, the Pistons and Detroit, and for some reason the third game, the
Hornets and
the Nets and the Hornets. Yeah, for some reason I got excited by wrestling.
A Charlotte hotbed activity.
I mean the highest owned player is Larry Nance. That's easy.
Yes. What is his number?
Again, you gave it away, by the way.
Did I?
3 times in a row, you went one really interesting piece of ownership.
Oh, yeah, I do like to tease it, but you're right. I probably
you and Josh. It's 3 days in a row.
I'm doing it though. He's doing it because he can't control his emotions. I'm doing it because I'm trying to be like, ooh, like fun, intriguing number. But yeah, that gives it away too easily for you.
So it's a big old number. Higher than it should be on a 10-game slate. 44%.
48%, which is in fact almost 7 times the number 2 owned player.
Yeah. I don't even
So following him, we have 4 guys in the 7% range. So
okay, that at least gives me a chance. Okay, fine. Because otherwise, like, this is a mess. I guarantee. I mean, like, there's going to be 22 players here who are decent somewhere between one
nobody
and 7%.
in double digits besides Nance at all. So
I'm not surprised. So 4 players in the 7% range.
Yep.
I'm gonna make my best guess. I'm only gonna take 20 seconds to think about this. This is too many dudes, and there's so many. We're gonna be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
I'll give you the teams. I think this is fine.
Oh, give me the teams. That's fine. Tell me how many players from which.
One is a Cav, one is a Piston, one is a Magician, and one is a Net.
What is him? He's a prestidigitator.
He turns tricks.
The Cav is, it can't be anybody but Tristan Thompson, right? The Cavs, Tristan Thompson.
That is correct. 7.4% for Tristan.
A Piston has to, this may make it too easy. The Piston is going to be Andre Drummond.
7.3% for Andre Drummond.
The Magician.
I love that. People should refer to the Magic players individually as magicians. I think
they really should. I think that's good. They've got the magic in them.
By the way, do you know Orlando's Magic? Their mascot, his name, and what he is?
Isn't it Puff the Dragon?
It is Stuff, and he's a weird looking, like, I don't even know, like Fraggle Rock looking motherfucker.
Yeah, he's combination of he's
like the Philly fanatic got ripped off and went to like a Chinese like Alibaba like type thing, and they're like, all right, send him back.
What's the name of the Flyers mascot? Gritty or whatever.
Yeah, Gritty. He's great. I like Gritty.
Gritty is really Gritty haunts my dreams. It's so I'm looking for a magician.
You are looking for a magician
and a net.
Yep.
I'm really torn on the magician. I can see. I mean, it won't be Birch. It won't be Fultz, although he should be higher on than he is. It's going to be Fournier or Isaac. I'll say Fournier.
It is in fact Isaac.
No. How much is Fournier?
The chosen son. Fournier is where's?
Wow, you went biblical there.
he is the chosen son in this particular.
He is. It's no. Abraham and Isaac and Esau. Ooh, we're getting Old Testament here. I'm feeling like I'm going to be smote for many of my life choices.
Fournier is at 4.7, so he is much lower. So you got one net left.
That's interesting. I mean, it's Allen or Dinwiddie. So many guard options. I'm going to say Jared Allen.
It is in fact Allen. He is at 7.02%, so 7 flat almost.
Bravo.
Yeah, I would. Dinwiddie, no respect. I mean, he's priced up at 5.5%. He's shown 65 fantasy point upside against Boston within the last week. I have more Dinwiddie in the field. I like Dinwiddie.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
A lot of people played themselves, including 0.02% Kyrie Irving. That's one particular one. David Nwaba. Somebody DM me about David Nwaba recently. I know he's like in the rotation, but why play David Nwaba right now?
How much did Fraggle Rock / the Dark Crystal John Henson get on?
Henson, where is he? Let's see. Henson is at 1.4%, just behind Christian Wood at 1.47.
Ooh, so I don't mind either of those guys. I don't remember what Wood was on DK. I just remember noting he was like 39 on FanDuel. I'm like, you know what? I can get behind that. But anyway.
Here we go. We'll leave on this note. Shout out to David Blakeney, who right now in the YouTube chat says, my job causes me to miss live before Lock and Eddie. This could have said Eddie and Spags, but whatever. Go fuck yourself, David. Reading your nice. But no, it's still mostly nice. This is a rare treat. Thanks, guys. So thank you, Dave. We appreciate you tuning in, even though.
I'm in the middle of my marathon. This is day 4 of 6 because covering all the stuff. So I will be back tomorrow and Sunday.
Welcome to my. I've had 2 days off
and I can officially comment. I will do Christmas. I'm gonna handle Christmas, so y'all can do whatever. You can drink your eggnog and cognac.
Oh, I certainly will. All right, guys, hit that like button before you go. Tune in to Eddie and EMAC all weekend long here. I guess not literally all weekend long. That would be a little bit much, but they will be doing shows this weekend. I have NFL shows this weekend too. On the contrary, tomorrow with Osmo and a special guest, one of the top DFS players in the world, who will be joining us. So another one where I get to be outclassed by my co-host. Sunday, me and I think it's Nolan doing Live Before Lock for NFL. So watch that. Eddie, any parting words for the folks before we call it quits for this fine Friday?
Be excellent to each other.
And spay and neuter your pets, guys. So that too. We appreciate all of you. Enjoy your weekends and good luck. Bye, guys.